we're speaking with Dermot Kelly, who's in Australia. What city are you in, Dermot?
In Adelaide, South Australia.
Okay.
And I'll be 55 next week, so I've been here 45 years. What else can I say? I'm from the northwest of England.
And you mentioned that you had spoken to a number of Australian researchers, including Mary Rodwell
and Stephen and Evan Strong.
Yes, right. And then you were just about to go into your experiences in the multidimensional world.
Okay, well, if I could just briefly say, it wasn't until I was 50 that I guess someone sent me a link to David Icke. And when I started following his work, and then somehow I saw one of your videos, one of Lisa Harrison's videos, George Kavassilis, I started to realise that a lot of the experiences that people were talking about were very similar to my own. And I started to reflect on my life, and when I was 50, I was actually starting to do the family history, and it just happened that I ended up with a double hernia in the groin area at work, and I had a few months off, so I had a lot of time to reflect about my life, and since then I've been passionately following different people, and once I was comfortable in listening to other people's stories, I realised that, you know, we're all human, and we've all got a story to tell, and a lot of people are scared to tell it. And most of my life, you know, I mean, people have always thought of me as a bit of a joker, and always a bit of a crazy one, maybe. And I suppose you could laugh that off in your youth, and, you know, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, and you're probably drinking a little bit too much, and, you know, doing the wrong things, and being a young lad, travelling the world, whatever. And I was actually in a rock band back then, but, you know, I could sort of laugh things off then. But, you know, when you get older and you're more mature and you have a family, you're not supposed to be as weird. But I am. And I don't mind admitting it. So, I guess, first of all, what I'd like to say is that one of my weirdest experiences as a 3.5 to 4-year-old in my birthplace, Rochdale, which is in Greater Manchester in Lancashire, in the UK. If you can just picture this, terraced housing, Coronation Street, and you've got 2 rooms downstairs and at most 3, maybe 4 upstairs, and that's it. And downstairs you've got a lounge room, and the other room is the kitchen. It's also the laundry, it's also the dining room, it's also the family room. And you basically, back in those early days, you know, in the early 60s, you basically washed there, you ate there, all at different times, of course, but you did everything in that one room, and then you retired into the lounge room later on. Well, my father was actually decorating and putting some wallpaper up in the lounge room, and I heard him call out to my mum, "Can you get me a bucket of something or other?" And I thought, you know, oh yeah, I'll help Dad, you know, and I ran into the lounge room, tripped over the carpet and fell into the open heath fire. I sat down. Now it wasn't a blaze, but it was the coal was like a very low heat. But I sat down, and because I had no concept in my mind of ouch, that's going to hurt, it didn't hurt. And I never got burnt. And to this day, I cannot understand how I never got burnt. And yet my mum and my father, you should have seen my father trying to scramble down the ladder, and my mum came screaming in, going, ah! They picked me up, dusted me off, and they couldn't find anything burnt. So that was my first weird experience where, you know, I was in a totally different mental state where I knew that something was different. I've never seen ghosts or fairies or anything like that. I've never meditated. I've never gone into New Age. How can I explain? Never really gone into the New Age or anything like that. Never. I've always been a working class man, but I've always been open-minded. I've always followed my heart, my intuition. When we came to Australia, and we were here in Adelaide, in the very first year, our next door neighbours, in the very first house that we built, it was, I recall it was 1970, and our next door neighbours, he actually worked in the mines at Lee Creek, which is about 400 miles north of Adelaide, and it's way out in the outback. And they had family there, and they invited us, as POMs, as they call us, to go there and have a bit of a holiday. So of course Mum and Dad, the family, you know, there was 4 of us at that time, and no, there was 5 of us, sorry, because I had one brother born the year we arrived. So we worked it out that Mum and Dad were up to no good on the boat coming out here. But how they did that, I don't know, because they shared the cabin with us, so... Oh dear. But anyway, when we were up there, they said to us, you know, it was a very hot summer's night, and they said, lie down on the back lawn and look up to the sky. Well, we looked up at the sky, and we could see these white lights going in a dead straight line. And they said to us that they're satellites. Now, where we were living in the metropolitan area in Adelaide, we were close to a small airport which does the, you know, the 2, 4 and 6-seater aeroplanes, a bit like the Royal Flying Doctor Service and things like that. So we were used to watching small planes going past, helicopters, and we knew what a plane looked like, we knew what the helicopters looked like, we knew what they sounded like, and we got a visual and distance. So when we saw these satellites going across, when we got into the suburbs, we couldn't see them because of the bright lights. However, I'd say it would be 72, 73, as a young boy, you know, a hot summer's night, me and my mate climbed onto their garden shed. Why we did it, I've got no idea. But boys are boys, we climb trees, we climb sheds, we climb everything. And we sat there, and I saw this white light, and it went from that horizon to this horizon, I'd say within 10 seconds, but it didn't go in a straight line, and it didn't go in a, how can I explain it, in the same way as an aeroplane or a helicopter or anything like that. It just looked like a white dot, and it was going all over the place like this, all over the sky, but it still took about 10 seconds to get from one horizon to the other. And I said to him, that's a UFO. And he said, get out of it, you know. He didn't believe in them, but I did. Why I believed in them, I've got no idea. But my inner being said, yes, that's a UFO. Well, I guess it was probably a year later. I was out on the driveway of our house with my 2 sisters and the 3 children from next door. And this was early, it wasn't late, it was between 7 and probably 8:30 at night. And back in those days, because everyone was new on the estate, we all knew each other fairly well, and you could be safe sitting on the front of your lawn or even sleeping out there back in those days. And our parents decided to go to the local hotel for a couple of drinks, and they were only going to be just over an hour, and they were about an hour and a half. Well, opposite our house we had a reserve, and if I say the word football, I'm talking about soccer, okay? But opposite our house was a football pitch, okay? And of course you've got a bit of grass either, you know, all the way around it, and you probably had room for 2. And a soccer pitch back then would have been about 150 to 180 yards long, to about 50 yards wide. So it's fairly big. And right on the opposite side of the reserve was a playground, and you could hear the swings gently blowing around in the breeze and clanging against the what would you call it? The supports. Well, when I heard them clanging, I could hear talking as well. So we knew that there were some other children on the playground. Well, the next minute, I say next minute, it probably was half an hour later, I heard this whoosh, and I saw something flash really quickly. Now my first instinct, I jumped up and I said to the girls, I said, that's a skyrocket, which back in those days was a firework. You'd put it in an old milk bottle, and it had a stick, and it was a huge, like, I can't explain it, but there was like a packet of an explosive, and when the fuse lit, it would shoot out the milk bottle and go up into the sky and then go, you know, into bright lights. That's what it looked like initially. And what followed next, I can't explain it, because I'm not sure whether I lost time. I'm not sure whether I saw what I saw was true. And I can't verify it because my sisters and my next door neighbours didn't see it. But it didn't freak me out. It never scared me. But I sat back down and carried on with the conversation after jumping up and saying, oh, that's a skyrocket. But the next minute, I found myself standing up, looking to the east, towards the Adelaide Hills. And I saw it would be at least half the size or 3/4 of the size of a football pitch. So I'm guessing 50 to 75 yards long. And I couldn't estimate how tall it was because... but if I had to guess, it probably would have been 3, maybe 4 stories high. And it was floating not much higher than the trees, so it was probably... in today's terminology, 5 metres off the ground. I couldn't hear anything, but it just hovered, and there was all these bright lights everywhere. And I was just mesmerised at these lights. Now, when I was watching Mary Rodwell's videos, and she took people back in regression, I realised that there was a guy in Victoria driving along, and he was actually taken on board a ship. And when he heard a particular song, that's when he came back into the car. Now, obviously it wasn't him physically going and coming back, it was his consciousness going and coming back. And when I heard the firework, I'm thinking, now, is that when I came back? Or, you see where I'm coming from? So I started to question my experience of many years ago. And I started to wonder, is this right, is this wrong? So when I spoke to Mary, I mean, she's very busy, got a very busy schedule, and I probably wouldn't be able to do a regression till next year anyway. So I still have to sit and wait and wonder, did I lose some time? Did I actually get transported to another ship? Was I identified? And if I was, when I was looking up at the ship and watching all the different lights, I actually got a feeling of, don't go, please don't go. So they must have been friendly, they must have been my family, star family, if that's what you want to call them. But more importantly, when they disappeared altogether and my parents came back, of course, what do? You tell your parents, I saw a UFO. And the girls are saying, no, he didn't see anything. And that's fair enough, because they didn't see it, they had no recollection. So it kind of freaked me out when I found this out, because I'm thinking, well, what the hell's going on? The next night, on the 6 o'clock news, because it was a hot summer's night, a lot of people do their washing at night, hang it out at night, and it'll be dry in the morning. Well, this lady, a bit closer to Adelaide, was doing just that, and she was on the 6 o'clock news saying that she saw this UFO. So it had come from Gawler in the north and gone right across the the northern suburbs of Adelaide, and ended up down south somewhere, down near Victor Harbour, Mount Gambier even. And there was sightings everywhere. So it was recorded, but obviously I kept it to myself for many years, because I couldn't explain too much about it at the time. And as you can tell, I don't have many details either, but I suppose once I have a regression, I might end up with some answers.
Sure.
So, what else has there been? Wow.
Do you recall the year and the date of that sighting?
I can't be 100% certain, but I said to Mary it was between 72 and 73. It may even be 74, but I'm pretty sure it was in my first 2 years of high school, which would have been 72, 73. So I am guessing, and the only reason I'm guessing is because for many years, like everyone else, when you have a sighting and no one believes in UFOs, you tend to put it to the back of your mind, and then when you do that sort of thing, details do get shunted to the back, and when you try to recall things years later, it's very difficult. So, but since then, I've had many experiences where I've had small bouts of clairvoyance, where I know when things are going to happen, or in one instance in particular, my dad, my brothers and I went to the local community club to watch the FA Cup final in England, because it beams live to Australia about 11:30 at night. And of course we're all mad Manchester United supporters, and we're all wearing our shirts and we're playing and we're all drinking beer and we're all having a game of 8-ball and, you know, having a great time. And this young lad came up to me and he said, "Who's going to win tonight?" And in typical fashion I said, "Manchester United, of course." And he said, "What's the score going to be?" And I said, without even thinking, I said 4-0. That's the last I saw of him. Well, what happened next was absolutely incredible, because when the game started, we actually got 2 penalties in the game and we won the game 4-0. Now, some people would say, "Oh yeah, that's luck." But this isn't the only time this has happened, okay? And this guy came up to me after the game and he said, "Here's a pint of beer, mate." I said, "What's that for?" He said, "Well, I put a bet on that United would win 4-0 and they did. So here's a pint on me." So I got a free pint of beer. But many times, you know, I've gone into raffles or things like that, just minor raffles. I'm not talking the national lotteries or anything like that, but just small raffles at work or social clubs or sporting clubs. And, you know, I might not have the money to buy the ticket. I just said, "I'll take it out of my winnings." And they just laughed and said, "We can't do that." I said, "Yeah, you can, because I'm going to win it." And they just looked at me and said, "No, you're not." So I said, "Okay, I'll lend the money, but I'm going to win it." And I have. Now, I've had visions of other things too, but I mean, little things like that you could probably put to premonition or bit of luck, whatever. But it happens so many times that you think to yourself, well, is it luck? Is it premonition? Is it clairvoyance? What is it, you know? But I also have the ability to hear voices as well. Many, many times I hear whispers in my ear or someone from a distance calling my name. And it doesn't matter where I am, there could be no one in the room and I'll still hear it. And quite often I've felt tugs on my shirt, pokes in the back, on the shoulder, even on the ear, like this, trying to get my attention. And because consciously I think, well, there's no one there, I tend to brush it off and think, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But when I reflect back over all these small instances, like the clairvoyance and the clairaudience, I think to myself, there's got to be something to it. Now, are you aware of the psychic in America called Sam Muggsy?
Yes. Yes. We're actually friends.
Okay. Well, it would be almost 2 years ago when I was on holidays. I actually tuned into one of her radio shows on the internet, and she was doing readings. And at the time, I felt like I was being a little bit repressed, because no matter what I wanted to do in life, I always felt like someone was stopping me from doing something. Because I always wanted to be successful in various ventures, but for some reason I worked harder than most and I just couldn't get anywhere. And I couldn't understand why. But Sam put it all in perspective when she did a reading for me. And it totally blew me away, because in this reading she said to me, well, first of all, I asked the one question. I said, is there a guardian angel around me? And if so, is this guardian angel stopping me doing what I want to do for a higher purpose? Or is this guardian angel stopping me for my own benefit? What is actually going on? Well, what she said next blew me away, and to this day I still cannot comprehend what the hell's going on. But anyway, here we go. She said to me, you haven't got one, you haven't got two, you've got 26 different entities from different star systems. And she said, not only are they protecting you, she said, you are a very, very ancient soul. And because you're an ancient soul, you've actually come here to do a specific job. And it's the first time in all those hundreds of thousands of lives that you've had that you've actually decided to take on a new role. And I said, well, what is this role? You know, what's going on? She said, well, you're actually here to awaken people, but you're at... And then she paused. She said, hang on a minute. She said, you're one of 54 people worldwide that are here to observe human behaviour. A lot of you have manifested as male and female in different countries. You're all different age groups. You've all got different perspectives. And you're here to observe and report back to all these different star groups. And basically, when we report back, as a group, we will then help humanity, not just on this planet, but on many other planets, with ascension. And she said, that will be my new career. And I'm thinking, wow. If I was to be successful financially as an entrepreneur, because most of my life I've worked in factories. So yes, I have been very suppressed working for, you know, minimum wage in a factory. And for a good many a year as a one-income family with 2 children. So when I was trying my best to become an entrepreneur, it was quite obvious that that was going to distract me, and so was the money. So no wonder, from a higher perspective, that these people were trying to guide me elsewhere. And it wasn't until I actually reflected when I was in my early 50s and put all the dots together, not just with, you know, what's going on in the world in general, and with the governments and what have you, and but from a higher perspective, it also put it in perspective for me, because Sam also said to me, she said, Dermot, you have totally immersed yourself in this 3D reality here on this planet, and you've deliberately switched off your clairvoyant and clairaudient abilities. However, you are able to switch them on at any moment, at any time, and they will come on at certain points in your life. So when I mentioned earlier about these small instances, it started to make more sense. So it started to make more sense to me when I joined the dots. And I've always thought differently to other people. Why I've thought differently, I don't know. But I have noticed myself just watching people and how they behave. And it's funny because some people, as you can imagine, would probably take that the wrong way, especially if you're out in public. So quite often I'd have to look away very quickly, or just smile and be happy and say, "G'day, how are you? You know, sorry if you feel uncomfortable. I was just enjoying the moment. You know, whatever." But anything to avoid embarrassment or to them or myself, because as you can imagine, it can be quite challenging at times. So yeah, so since then, in the last, I'd say, year or so, I got in touch with Stephen and Evan Strong. And the reason I got in touch with them was because when I saw Stephen's video on his website about ancient, what was it? Ancient aliens in Australia, I was fascinated. I thought, okay, let's have a look, you know. Well, I thought, well, if someone could teach me at school history like he was explaining on this video, not only would it be interesting, but it was very easy to follow. Well, I must admit, as a student at school, I was like most kids, very, very bored. Didn't like being told what to do, and I was a free spirit. And if you look up my name, Dermot, which is an Irish name, it means free of envy, free spirit. So I'm very much the free spirit. So I felt very repressed at school. And I tend to feel very repressed in a work situation too, but you know, I don't have many more years to go in that regard, so I'm sure I can bear with it for the time being. But where was I going? Yes, I contacted Stephen and Evan, as we're friends on Facebook as well, and I said to them, you know, it's fantastic that you've spoken to Alfred. I said, but have you spoken, you know, have you got your message out to other people? And they mentioned Graham Hancock. Now, Graham is an expert in, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Egyptology. And he travels the world looking for evidence of different artefacts and carvings and drawings or whatever. Well, just recently, Graham and his wife came to Australia and did a few talks. Unfortunately for me, they didn't come to Adelaide. But they did do the eastern seaboard, and I believe they went to Perth as well, in WA. But what they did do with Stephen and Evan is that they did come to South Australia, but not to do a talk. They went to Kangaroo Island, which is just off the coast of South Australia. And it's a very special place, as is the Flinders Ranges in the north of Adelaide. And they met up with the elders, the Aboriginal elders there, and they were taken to some really sacred sites, and they were camping for 3 or 4 days. Well, Graham had a conference in Perth, so he had to fly out a day earlier. But when Stephen and Evan were going back to Adelaide Airport, I was very fortunate to catch up with them and just have 3/4 of an hour with them at Adelaide Airport before they flew out to Sydney. Now, previous to this, I'd actually contacted the People's Voice with David Icke in London, and I managed to get hold of Mark Windows, and he did a YouTube video with Stephen and Evan on ancient Australians in Australia. And that was like an introduction to the story, and he had people in the studio discussing it. Now, if you're familiar with the Out of Africa theory, I'm not sure quite how far back it goes, but here in Australia, they've got physical evidence, as you're well aware, you know, with what Stephen has told you, of 60 to even 150,000 years going back of not only Egyptians in Australia, but drawings that show UFO activity. And no one can explain it. So there has to be something to it. So I felt that the story had to get out there. So not only have Stephen and Evan got the story out to the world via yourself and Graham Hancock, but I've also helped them get it out there via the People's Voice. And when I was with Stephen and Evan at Adelaide Airport, I asked them, I said, do I still need to contact Mark, or is this ongoing now? And they said, oh, you wouldn't believe it, but they're having a bit of a break, and when they get back, I believe Windows on the World will continue, and they are filming a series of YouTube videos telling different parts of the story. And so they have organised that, and it's going to go ahead in the future. So I feel very, very privileged to have been part of that, because it is a story that needs to get out there. It definitely has to get out there. And just to, I guess, help the layman understand how Egyptians would have gotten to Australia, let's not forget, if we go back 60 to 150,000 years ago, the physical size of the Earth was nowhere near as big as it is today. In fact, if you can imagine that the Earth was this big and the land mass was a lot closer, and as it grew over thousands of years, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and water came between it. So you can imagine that these days there's there is mass water everywhere. But back in those early days, it would have been a lot closer. And that's why you can explain how the Aborigines, or the Africans even, moved from continent to continent very quickly and very easily. And those that were very clever built boats and moved from continent to continent very quickly and very easily. So you don't have to be Einstein to work it out that, you know, as the Earth grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger, obviously it's going to be harder to get from one part of the globe to the other. But in the early stages, the Earth was nowhere near as big as it is now. So that's why we have to, okay, I shouldn't say we have to, because we don't have to, but those of us that know or understand this would realise that the ancient Aborigines were very spiritual, and the ancient Egyptians were very good at, I don't know whether you could call it technology or whether you would call it at writing. But between the two races, they actually combined the knowledge. And as the Earth got bigger and grew apart, the knowledge was spread onto different parts of the Earth. And this is why I get passionate, because when I look at the indigenous races in each country, whether it be the Aboriginals in Canada, in North America, in Europe, or whether it be in Australia, why is it that Western society, and I don't want to get political here because it's not about politics, but why is it that throughout history we've had nothing but wars, and we've killed and suppressed all this knowledge going back thousands and thousands of years, even before religion? And I really don't want to go there either. But you can understand that something is going on. Even back then. Why are we suppressing the knowledge? And why are we suppressing it today? Well, it's pretty obvious today. We've got a lot of distractions. But back in those ancient times, we wouldn't have known what was going on the other side of the world. And as the world got bigger and bigger, it was harder and harder to get there. So what was actually going on? Was it that there was UFO activity and they were able to go from one side to the other and tell people what was going on? Well, if you don't believe in UFOs and you don't believe in extraterrestrial life, then the answer would be, don't be stupid. But if you do believe in it, it makes perfect sense. So, I guess at this point in time, this is my story. I'm sure I've forgotten many in other instances, but if you've got any questions, Alfred, fire away.
Sure. Well, this could be a very lengthy, but what I'd like to ask you is, in the role that Sam Muggsy said you'd be, what words would you like to leave our viewers with?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, as a very humble working class human being, on a minimum one income wage, and not having a very, I wouldn't say a very good education, but I mean, I did have a public school education. I never went to university, but I did do further education to become a painter and decorator. Not that I ever wanted to be a painter and decorator, but I'll go into that later. But I'd just like to point out that I'm nothing special. I'm just a normal, everyday human being. Having said that, I feel very humble and very privileged that I've been told this information. I'm still trying to get my head around it, to be perfectly honest, because I'm still trying to think, do I believe it? Do people believe me when I tell them? Probably not. Do I care? Well, it's not about whether I care, it's about whether they care. I mean, if I was to say I care or I don't care, people would think, well, if he don't care, why should I? Well, we all have free will. This is what I'd like to say. We all have free will, so we can all think whatever we like. And it really doesn't matter what we think, because deep down, and when I say deep down, I should say on the higher levels of consciousness that actually look after us, because we have the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, but we also have the higher consciousness that's looking after both. And I believe he's guiding us to our destinies. Now, whether we like it or not, we are destined. There's no doubt in that at all. And the more I delve into this subject, the more I realise how we do manifest our thoughts and we do manifest our situations. But what I have noticed is that some people, especially, and I don't want to start picking on different groups because that's wrong also, but I do feel that when some groups go into New Age and spirituality, or even religious groups, what they've got to understand, that's fine, and they have free will and they can do that. But let's be perfectly honest here. When we're on this planet, it's not just about going towards the light and listening to everything that's there. We also have to learn the dark side of our personalities. The reason for that is quite simple. If you learn the good and the bad about you as an individual, you will then go down the centre, and it will be more harmonic and more balanced. And I believe you hear that George Cavassalis talks about something very, very similar, in that you need to acknowledge the dark as well as the light. And I firmly believe that, because even though it's nice to be chosen, I still have to accept that, you know, at times in this 3D reality, I can be a grumpy old bastard at times. You know, I can be just like everybody else. And yeah, I can get upset when my football team loses. Absolutely. You know, because I'm human. I've got emotions. I've also got free will. Sometimes it doesn't bother me when my team loses. It bothers other people. And they often try to stir me up and say, ha 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 ha. But it doesn't really bother me, because I can't control that. I worry about what I can control. So yes, I feel very privileged and very humble.
Very good. Well, I certainly want to thank you for being with our viewers today and sharing this message, which I think is an important one. And we look forward to you coming to visit again from time to time. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Alfred. And I wonder what sort of effect this is going to have.
Well,
but you know what? I think if we hide in the closet, no one knows. No one's going to know what's there. And I don't mean hide in the closet as in being, you know, homosexual or anything like that. What I mean is hiding in the closet with the knowledge that we know.
Right.
And if there's anybody else out there that is working class or even educated, don't be afraid. If you've had instances in your life that you can't explain, and you look back on your life and you join the dots and you go, something is definitely going on, then actively pursue it and find out why. Because if you search, you will find the answers, definitely. I'm not saying I've got all the answers, and I'm still searching, to be honest. And I can't wait to talk to Mary again and do the regression, because if I can do that, then I'll be able to find out for sure.
Now, where can people contact you if they wish?
Where can they contact me? Well, I don't have a website, and I'm just an everyday common person. Yeah. So,
well, I could put we could talk about this later, and if you like, you could give me an email, and I could publish it. Yeah,
or they can contact me at opinions, OPINIONS.
Yes.
Dash at AT, and then the at sign that is the international sign, hotmail.com.
Okay, good. You'll give me that, and then I'll put it on the video.
And although I've given that to people in the past, when I actually set that up, it was for something totally different, and I didn't realise when I put at that I had to use the at sign as well. So it's actually the physical at and the international sign for at.
Well, there you go.
Very
good. Well, look, we certainly thank you for sharing all of this with us and with our viewers.
And thank you to yourself, to Stephen and Evan, to Mary Rodwell, to Lisa Harrison, to David Icke, Mark Windows, and the many, many more people out there that are actually spreading the information so that we can all come to the party, because there's a lot more that I think that that you and I especially could talk about that I probably wouldn't want to talk about publicly just yet. But in the exopolitical arena. But I'm getting very excited that the time is coming very quickly, very closely, and I think for someone who has been told he's an ancient soul, I'm getting really, really tired of this 3D reality. I just want it to be over and done with. And I'm pretty sure there are many people out there that are feeling just that. But they don't know why.
Right.
But on the higher consciousness level, we are all working towards spreading the word. And believe it or not, I've actually managed to talk to a lot of people, and they're actually starting to listen and do their own research now. So
very good.
This is why I'm starting to think, well, I need to get this out there and help others.
Good. You know, we've started a new institution, a new initiative called Omniversity. Like you've had for universe, there's the University.
Yes.
For the multiverse, there's the Multiversity. And for the Omniverse, which includes both the physical universes of the multiverse, plus the spiritual dimensions of the afterlife and the intelligent community of souls and God, there's the Omniversity. And I was wondering if you would like to engage in a conversation on Omniversity. And what we usually do is that we'd like to gift you a copy of my new book, The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse, and I can send it to you via Kindle because it's really easy to get to Australia in just a few seconds. And then you can read it at your leisure, and then we'll set up a time and have a conversation, and that'll go up in the Omniversity website. Is that something that you'd like to do?
That'd be fantastic, Alfred. That is a real pleasure and an honour. Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll connect after the broadcast. I'll get all of your details, and we'll set that up. And in the meantime, thank you so much.
Thank you.